Hello, welcome to 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. The question of today's show is Philadelphia any better today than it was 50 or 60 years ago? Is it safer? Is it cleaner? Is it more hospitable? Is it a more interesting place? Does it have the same kind of leaders, effective leaders that we had back 50, 60 years ago? I'm old enough to have been a witness to some of it. My guest today, Frank Dougherty, not only was a witness to it, but he was reporting on a good bit of it as a reporter for the Daily News. Frank Dougherty, welcome to 30 Minutes. Delighted to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
I met Frank, I don't know, a few months ago. Frank is a friend of the station, Radio Studio 21, and has made his writing skills and ability available to the station in press releases, publicity, and so on, and has worked very closely with George Strimmel. But I met him at a function that George had invited me to, and what invariably happened was, because we were of about the same vintage, we started talking about the good old days, the people we both knew in the public relations, advertising, communications, and so on. And I hadn't found too many people I could talk with who knew firsthand the people that I knew back then and grew up with in the industry. So I'm delighted you were willing and available to come on the show today to talk about the good old days.
I'm happy to be here.
Let's start with you are a Philadelphia native, right?
Yes.
Born and raised?
Born and raised in the River Wards, the Port Richmond section, for those out there who are familiar with the city. And I currently live in the East Falls section of Philadelphia. And born in Philadelphia, and I'll probably die in Philadelphia.
Your career, you spent most of your career in journalism as a newspaper reporter.
Yes, I did. I was one of the last of the, known as the reporter apprentices. And that was, I was a copy boy. And you literally run copy, do errands around the newsroom. In your spare time, you're allowed to do small things like a 2 or 3 paragraph little story about a bar holdup or a car accident, things like that. And I did that for 3 years, and then I went out on the street.
With the Daily News? With
the Daily News as a police reporter, and then just did other jobs as a street reporter, and for almost 40 years.
And you started back in the 60s?
Yes. I went out on the street in August of 1963. Kennedy was in the White House. I was in the press room.
When you were in the service, were you writing for the military as well?
Well, I was drafted, and I ended up in Fort Hood, Texas in 1964. My first year I was a loader on an M60 tank. But because of my newspaper experience, on an off day I went to the PIO, which is the Public Information Office. And it was an armored camp, and our newspaper was the Fort Hood Armored Sentinel. And I spent a year as an Army reporter.
But did you aspire when you were in high school and so on? Did you aspire to be a writer, to be a reporter? Or did you stumble into it the way most of us did?
No, the way I stumbled into it the way most of us did, because I did not know what I wanted to do. And if at that point in time in the late 50s and 60s, if you did not know what you wanted to do, go to a newspaper and you'll find your way. And I did.
Why did you stick with one paper? Because at the time, my recollection is, although they didn't hop, you might spend some time with the Bulletin, the Daily News, the Inquirer. Why the Daily News?
Well, I've often thought about that all my 40 years there, and I guess about 10 years ago I was reading Robert Frost's poem, The Death of the Hired Man, The Death of a Hired Man, The Death of the Hired Man. And there is one line in there that goes, home is the place where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in. And I went to the Daily News, and it became my home. And you're right, this was a point where people would just work at different newspapers, building up a portfolio.
Right.
But I loved what I was doing, and it was just a fun newspaper, and I stayed.
Well, you've got a phenomenal memory bank, because I know from our previous conversations talking about different aspects of life in Philadelphia. But let me ask you I guess the top question. Is Philadelphia today, in your opinion, you live in Philadelphia, you have lived in Philadelphia most of your life. Is Philadelphia a safer city today than it was 50 or 60 years ago?
Oh, no.
No?
No, you just have to look at the statistics, particularly murder, violent crime. gun crime. Certainly were murders when, in
Yes.
Philadelphia 50 or 60 years ago, but not on the same scale. And if there would be a murderer, usually the murderer would shoot his or her target. Neighborhoods weren't being shot up. Children weren't. It was unheard of that a baby in a carriage would be wounded or killed because one individual wanted to shoot another individual.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more dangerous now.
You must wonder why. What accounts for it?
Well, it's probably, I feel a lot of it is the composition of the city. I look at Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, in 1960, it was the last census where Philadelphia had more than 2 million residents. I think it was 2.1 or 2 million people living within the city limits. It was the last time. And I think that that's the year that Philadelphia became the rich family that had been living off the interest. And that year, Philadelphia, the city, began to go into the principal. And I think that was when the city started to not deteriorate, but everything changed. Because I think when that happened, also, even in 1960, the third largest industry in Philadelphia was textiles, clothing industry.
Yes.
There were clothing factories in my old neighborhood on Allegheny Avenue in Port Richmond and West Kensington. These textile mills, they went into the South. And then Philadelphia just started to lose, over the next 2 decades, little manufacturers, no big manufacturers,
Yes.
Procter, Silex, and it
The
all
whole manufacturing
happened.
base.
The whole manufacturing base. And this, probably from 1960 to 1975, it was mostly all gone. And why is it, and how did it hurt the city besides job loss? Philadelphia, to me, was such a delightful place growing up because it was, quote, the city of neighborhoods.
Yes.
And you had these little tiny villages around the core called City Hall. But these were, they were almost autonomous zones.
Yes.
And that's mostly all gone now.
Yeah, it is. It's such a shame. I know exactly what you mean because I grew up in one of those little villages in West Philadelphia before we moved out to the suburbs. That migration that occurred, I guess, back in the 60s, it started. The migration from Center City into the western suburbs, particularly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the neighborhood that I grew up in, we had 3 movie houses that we identified with our neighborhood. We had a very good local hospital, Northeast Hospital, and there were small businesses on every corner. But I mean small business. I mean a shoemaker, a typewriter repair place. These neighborhoods were self-contained units, and you didn't need a car, and your neighborhood served most of your needs. Almost when I come to Wayne, I love to go through Wayne because you have everything here.
Yes.
As Mr. Strimmel, the manager of the station, he says, we have 2 bookstores, we have an Acme Market, we still have a movie house, we have a liquor store, we have everything vital to life.
But we have those things, and you triggered it with the movie theater. If it weren't for Steve Bagis, we wouldn't have the movie theater today. And we're fortunate to have had people like that who stepped up and who were willing to put whatever moral support was necessary, but also financial support to not only preserve, but to improve, enhance, like the theater. And I'm sure he put a lot of money into it, renovating it and so on. We used to have that in Philadelphia. We had strong leadership. I remember way back, people like John Bunning, First Pennsylvania Bank, Richardson Dilworth, all of the names that are now part of the history and the lore of the city. But these were strong, strong leaders, not just politicians, but strong civic-minded people who had a vision, had a glimpse of what the city could be and how to preserve it.
Yeah, well,
we don't have it, I don't think.
Well,
we don't have any of that today.
We do not have not the same caliber that we had back then. And I can give you a good example. You mentioned Richardson Dilworth. I can remember in 1955, I graduated from elementary school. This was 1955, and Richardson Dilworth was the mayor, and he was on the radio telling people, we must get ready for this bicentennial celebration. Philadelphia, it will probably be selected if we start working now. And people are saying, well, when would this bicentennial be? And he said, well, 1976. And people snickered. That's 21 years away. Dilworth had looked back to the centennial and how long the city spent 40 years preparing for the 1876 centennial. Yeah, and look at the buildings and bridges were built to get ready. People began to discuss it. And I can remember people snickering and saying that Dilworth, he's so silly. We have plenty of time. This is 21 years away. Well, as a reporter, one of the things that I covered was the 1976 bicentennial celebration. And it came up short in a lot of different ways commemorative events that were supposed to happen really did not happen. It was poor planning. And, nobody listened to Dilworth, and I think it hurt the effort.
But that celebration did mark the beginning of the Renaissance in the city. The number of restaurants, for example, just by that measure, the number of really good restaurants in the city that were a direct result of preparing for and then in the immediate aftermath of the celebration, 1976.
Yeah.
Yes?
Well, it helped the neighborhoods, and I guess it made Philadelphia more attractive to people coming here for conventions, but it certainly did not help what I considered gave the city all of its oxygen, and that was the neighborhood grid.
When was Old City, when did the gentrification of Old City start? Was that around the same time, or did it precede the bicentennial? I remember my father had a business and property down along the waterfront, so on weekends my brothers and I would go down there, and I remember that was not a good place to be back then. That was in the 50s.
No, I think that probably began after the bicentennial, because up till that point, the gentrification was Society Hill.
Yeah.
But nothing much moved past Society Hill. And just to go north up into Old City, I just think that was a natural progression.
Yeah.
The same way going south into Queen Village and eventually into South Warwick.
But I'm sure if I walked through there today, I would have a hard time remembering what it was like, because everything has been improved and all the investment that's been made.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a haven now for young people.
For young people,
who bring vitality and money and so on into the city.
A lot of the factories, a lot of the businesses, just one Molten Ladders when I was a kid. A lot of people in my neighborhood worked. It was a firm that made ladders, and I passed what was their building, and it's now condominiums.
Yeah,
and
it's amazing how we were able to salvage the past to make room for the future. You have a particular interest in public transportation. SEPTA, right?
Yeah, because I covered SEPTA at two levels. One as a transit reporter, and also the Daily News came up with this character called the Phantom Rider. You only saw the back of my head, and I focused on consumer. This started in 1970 when newspapers began to branch out doing different types of criticism. You always had the film critic, you always had a theater critic, but now all of a sudden newspapers are having rock and roll critics, a television critic. And at that time, Philadelphia had the third largest public transit system in the United States. And at that time, with more modes than just about anybody else in the country, I mean, we had subway trains, elevated trains. We were the trolley car capital of the United States. Buses, the Norristown high-speed line. And the thinking was we should really start criticizing public transit to see what is the transit system doing its job in getting riders from point A to point B in time, in comfort. Are they safe? And I did this for 30 years.
30 years?
Yeah.
And concluded what?
Well, I concluded that the main mission of SEPTA during the time that I was covering SEPTA, and I've been retired 10 years, the main mission should have been, moving passengers from point A to point B. But there were too many other priorities, and a lot of it among the SEPTA board members in getting consultant contracts for friends. At that time, SEPTA had a legal department of, I don't know, maybe 26, 27 in-house attorneys. You're always bringing in outside legal help on bond issues. And again, it was just a way of taking care of your pals. It was the Philadelphia way, who you knew and who can you do a favor for, put it in the favor bank, and you two down the line or down the track will be rewarded.
You knew and covered a lot of very colorful people, important people in the history of Philadelphia, not the least of which was Frank Rizzo, but there were others. You've told me some stories about Frank and kind of the love-hate relationship that most people had with him.
I have to, full disclosure, I liked Frank Rizzo, and I know what he was capable of, and I know some of the outrages that he pulled off. But at the same time, I think Rizzo had a great love for the city of Philadelphia, and I think his concern for, and this is a campaign quote, for the little guy, I think that was sincere. People will differ with me, but...
what do you remember most about him? Was there an event or a situation that you witnessed in his public life?
In the public life, I mean, Rizzo was a take-charge guy, and one of the things that I liked about him is that when he made a mistake or a wrong call, and he made a lot of mistakes and a lot of wrong calls, but he admitted it. He was the first to say, well, I should have done this, or maybe I should have listened to an advisor. He didn't bring out the spin masters, which you see in politics today, and it doesn't matter if it's Republicans or Democrats or liberals or conservatives or Tea Party people. Nobody will take responsibility for their actions and for their decisions. And I think he did, and that's one of the reasons that I liked him.
But what accounted for his downfall? Because he went from the zenith in terms of popularity and getting things done, being a true leader. And then all of a sudden, it was nothing. It just slid very, very quickly on the other side of that hill.
Well, I think it's something that we touched on when we began this interview, and that is the city neighborhoods, the city people. Then you mentioned people going out to the western suburbs. When Rizzo was the police commissioner, the neighborhoods were still pretty intact, and he had the Rizzo people. They were viewed as Democrats, but you had a lot of Democrats who would vote Republican when Rizzo shifted to his second term. He became a Republican.
Right.
They became Rizzo-crats. The principles of the Democrat Party, principles of the Republican Party had nothing to do with their vote. They were voting for Rizzo. When he tried to change the city charter, a lot of the people who had put him in office and supported him as police commissioner and then voted him 2 terms as mayor, they were gone. They were in Washington Township, Gloucester County, they were in Burlington County, they were in the western suburbs. A lot of that voter base was no longer in the city of Philadelphia, and although they still supported him vocally and telling all their friends, they could not vote for him. And that's literally, it pulled the trap door, because Rizzo and his people felt if they could get a charter change where he could run for a 3rd term, he would, just like the first 2 times, it would be this landslide, and it wasn't there.
If Philadelphia is noted for anything, it's noted for its sports fans. Still today, I think, in all sports. Can you comment on the sports fan of 50 years, Philadelphia sports fan of 50 years ago, and today's tailgaters?
Well, I think the sports fans of 50 years ago were more knowledgeable about the sport, and they were fans, which comes from, of course, fanatic, with being able to keep, box scores and being knowledgeable about the players. A lot of them still are, but again, I like to give examples.
Yes.
I have a Sunday series Phillies ticket program. I have 14 Sundays, and I'm out at Citizens Bank Park on the porch. And I have to say, I'm out there 14 Sundays a year. I'm right behind the bar on the porch. And I would say that half of the people out at the ballpark are there for baseball not being the primary attraction. They're there for the event. They're there to eat. They're there to drink. But drink alcoholic beverages like it's a bar or it's a club.
Yeah.
You're constantly getting up and down during the game because people are going out to buy food. They're going to the food courts. They're talking during the game. So then the Phillies announcer will say, you know, it's another big sellout game. We got 44,000 baseball fans here today. But I would think maybe at least a third of them are there for other reasons other than baseball.
That's an interesting observation. And would it apply across the board, that is to every sport, not just basketball, hockey, football, as well as baseball, and now soccer?
I can't speak with authority because I don't go to football games or basketball games, but I know a lot of hockey people because they grew up in the River Wards. I think of all the sports, hockey fans are still the true believers.
The genuine, yeah.
When it comes to the Flyers, a Flyers fan is a jihadi. It's, you know.
Yeah.
And they know the players and they know the stats and they are the true fans.
My son is a throwback because even today, he is encyclopedic memory when it comes to stats, sports, who did what, when, what Saturday afternoon, what time of the day. It's amazing how he's able to jam and retain all of that trivia. There aren't too many people like that anymore.
Yeah, well, again, with the Philadelphia fan, I think I don't say it's unique to Philadelphia, but I think it's certainly more of a force here, and that is fans who love their teams here, keep up with the statistics and everything else, are also the quickest. Those who love the Phillies with the deepest love, or those who have this greatest love for the Eagles, are the first to turn on them if they don't think the team is performing to their expectations.
Comment, you still live in the city, comment on the, I guess the renaissance that's been going on, maybe that's not the appropriate word, in Center City, with the real estate market coming back inch by inch, but with a number of high-rise condos, very expensive in most cases. What kinds of folks are they attracting to the city? And which is it, the chicken or an egg? Is it the high-rises that are attracting the young, affluent people, or is it the growth of that market that's resulting in the proliferation of all of these monuments?
Well, what's driving a lot of this, and again, everything I say is in my view.
No, I understand.
But the tax abatement that the city of Philadelphia is giving to people who will buy a condo or particularly Center City property.
Yes.
This tax abatement that the city's constantly chipping away at was a 10-year abatement. And a lot of the people who are coming into the city are the empty nesters from New Jersey or from the western suburbs who now want to come back and maybe enjoy some city living. They're tired of mowing lawns. Their kids have grown up. The homes are too big. They want to be in the city with these great restaurants, theater. And these are the people, in my view, who are driving this renaissance, this boom, is that they're coming back after 30, 40, and maybe 50 years.
Yeah. It seems to me Philadelphia has never really had a robust nightlife, certainly not during the week, but even on weekends. On Saturday nights, by about 10 o'clock, you can shoot a cannon off on Broad Street or true Center City. And as soon as the Academy lets out, or the Kimmel Center, or any of those places, and people are in their cars and gone, there's not much else going on.
Well, I think that was true.
In the good old days when you had Palumbo's and you had some of the clubs downtown and in the immediate area.
Yeah, but I find now at Center City, particularly on the weekends, is that there are a lot of smaller nightlife attractions. a lot of the restaurants now have al fresco dining, and people will linger. There's a lot of the little small bars that they're sort of between a bar and a nightclub, where you'll have maybe some live entertainment, some musicians, and particularly if you go down up and down Pine Street, Walnut Street, parts of South Broad Street. I think that there is more of this now than maybe there was 10 years ago, and I think there are things that you can find that would draw people. Now, of course, one of the things earlier we had talked about crime.
Yes.
The city was doing a wonderful job in luring people, maybe just to Starbucks on Chestnut Street or to a restaurant with some live music. But these flash mobs.
Yes.
And we haven't had a flash mob incident in about a year, but that people just hear about one incident. And that's it. They'll never stay. They'll go from the Academy of Music to Suburban Station to come back here to Wayne.
Do you have an opinion about what's been going on the Parkway? Because there seems to be one major event after another along the Parkway.
Yeah, there have been a lot of events on the Parkway that have been very successful in terms of bringing people out.
Yes.
But there was a major event over the Labor Day holiday, and that was the first paid event.
Yes.
On the Parkway.
40,000 people or so?
Yeah, they had to have 100,000, I'm told, to break even. The first day, I think the city got close to 50,000. But then the next day, Sunday, it was because of inclement weather.
Yeah.
There was maybe only 25,000. But the city entered into an agreement with Budweiser. It was the first time that alcohol was to be found on the Parkway and legally sold. In fact, the nickname was the Benjamin Franklin Parkway became the Bud Franklin Parkway. Now, Mayor Nutter says he will not know until probably the end of the month if the city was able to break even on this, or if the city would lose some money. Nobody ever went into this thinking that they would make a profit, but the feeling was that if you could have a musical event of this size, along with the Bruce Springsteen concert, which was a sellout, I'm told, at the Citizens Park, that it would anchor Philadelphia as a major musical venue. So if the city's able to pull this off, then I think it bodes well for.
I have mixed feelings about it, but I'm old. Enough of the past. Let's talk about the future. Are you optimistic about the future of Philadelphia, having been a student of it for half a century?
No. One of the reasons I'm not too optimistic is Philadelphia always prided itself on having lower real estate taxes than some of the other, say Baltimore or New York City or Washington, D.C. Again, it was the city of neighborhoods. People stayed in the neighborhoods and taxes were kept down. And in the next year or two, there's going to be a major shift as everybody is reassessed. And the city has this one problem that will not go away, and it gets bigger and bigger. It gets bigger as we speak, because as we're speaking here right now, a city employee, whether it be a policeman, somebody from the LNI, has put in their papers for retirement. The city has this huge hundreds of millions of dollars obligation to city retirement benefits. And they are just so much in the hole now that I don't see how the city can dig out of it without these draconian measures with business taxes, real estate taxes. So I think the city's in big trouble.
To the extent that that applies across the board, across the country, every major city is in serious, serious trouble. And that's going to change the landscape. It's certainly going to change the quality of life for an awful lot of people.
Well, someone
it's not good.
Said to me, a city council member that I was speaking with about a month ago, said, our greatest fear, Frank, is that we're going to go California. Meaning, I know Redding, California is in bankruptcy.
Stockton.
Stockton is in bankruptcy.
Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Scranton, Pennsylvania.
And Philadelphia.
The feeling is that with Philadelphia, it's not a question of if, it's when, and it could be in the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, we can only hope. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. It's been a
Pleasure.
pleasure and fun going back 50 years. We didn't talk about some of the people we both knew. We probably couldn't talk about them on camera anyway.
No, we don't want you
No,
to
don't want
lose
to.
your license.
Until next time, this is 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. Take good care of yourselves.